As global warming continues, scientists agree that the world is moving towards a dangerous tipping point of climate change in 2050. Currently, the level of greenhouse gases trapped in the atmosphere is 372 parts per million. Scientists report that if 450 parts per million level is reached, the world would reach that tipping point. When this happens, many parts of the world would be submerged underwater as mountain glaciers melt and drain into the oceans. Super cyclones would be more frequent. Long droughts would result in the desertification of many places. Climate-related diseases would spread globally. More famine would happen as agriculture would be severely affected. In the Philippines, it was observed that there was an average increase of temperature of 0.57 degrees Celsius from 1971 to 2000. If the tipping point of irreversible climate change is reached, as predicted in 2050, a 7-meter rise in sea levels will drastically reduce the land areas of islands in our country. Moreover, as the sea temperature rises because of global warming, more and more intense cyclones enter our country. In December 2011, Typhoon Sendong took more than 1,000 lives in northern Mindanao. Climate change is a global issue. Countries convened and agreed to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Unfortunately, all talks and negotiations attempting to address climate change served futile. The Philippines, as a developing country, is vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. A recent Climate Change Vulnerability Index released by the global risks advisory firm Maplecroft ranked 16 countries out of 170 as extremely vulnerable to climate change. Of the 16, the Philippines is ranked 6th. Recognizing the archipelago's vulnerability to its potential dangerous consequences, in 2009, the Climate Change Commission was formed through Republic Act 9729, whose main function is to coordinate, monitor, and evaluate the government's programs to prevent and reduce the adverse impacts of climate change in the country. The Commission formulated the National Framework Strategy on Climate Change, or NFSCC, which was adopted in April 2010. It was then that multi-sectoral consultations were held to create the National Climate Change Action Plan. The ultimate goal of NCCAP is to build the adaptive capacities of women and men in their communities, increase the resilience of vulnerable sectors and natural ecosystems to climate change, and optimize mitigation opportunities towards gender-responsive and rights-based sustainable development. Food security can be greatly affected by climate change. Thus, there is a need to study the vulnerability of the food production sector and to create strategic actions to enhance climate change resilience of agriculture and fisheries.
Noong 1980s, maganda po yung nagiging namin dito. Dahil yung panahon noon, talagang maganda. Yung tag-ulan, talagang tag-ulan, yung tag-araw. Pero po habang tumatagal, nagbabago na yung klima, yung panahon, kaya umuunti na yung namin dito.
Ibang akong kanito ang kuwan klima. Init ka ng panahon kaysa nito. Nasa una, medyo mayo yung kuwan na ito sa una, pero karon buti ka, gamay man ang pakuha sa panagat.
Because climate change can also affect water supply, there is a need for higher water sector governance, considering the effect of climate change. It is also important to assess the resilience of major water resources and infrastructures, manage supply and demand, manage water quality, and promote conservation.
Talagang bumaba talaga yung tubig niya, talagang malinta lang ang tubig niya. Ganun siya ka bilis bumaba kapag hindi umulan. Dahil yung mga puno natin, hindi na maganda yung maintenance ng water cycle.
The current Philippine marine ecosystems are not in good shape, and further damage will be brought by climate change. Thus, there is a need to adjust human activities, protect and rehabilitate critical ecosystems, and strengthen its ecological resilience through mitigation and adaptation.
Observation talaga namin, nagbabago talaga yung coral reef ng Bugbagbog. Dati matitingkad na green, unti-unting nagiging brown, tapos wala na talaga. Makikita mo na mamatay talaga ang corals na sisira.
The recent tragedies brought by climate change should be a wake-up call to everybody. National and local government agencies should create strategic actions that give importance to coordinated efforts on disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation to minimize the threats to human security.
Timuto mapagawas mo sa among balay, di naman matukan ang tubig. Nagputos na ako akong anak na 3 years old umalong. Timuto nga. Pagawas na ako sa among balay, nakagapos kami og lubi. Ako wala na ako kabalo kung asa na ako mama, ako pa kung maigsuon. Kabulaang na namin. Silang yun siya talaga ng isip.
There is also a need to promote climate-smart industries or business sectors that provide products and services aimed at utilizing resources more efficiently to lower their gas emissions. Because the issue of climate change is mainly brought by human activities that use energy, there is a fervent need to promote utilization and development of sustainable and renewable energy, promote environmentally sustainable transport, and climate proofing and rehabilitation of energy systems infrastructures. Climate change is a complex issue. It is important to have enough knowledge and holistic understanding of its causes and impacts, especially at the local and sectoral levels, and to have appropriate capacity to address the issue of climate change. Resiliency is vital. A resilient nation has resilient communities. Change Commission's Ecotime Framework is an ecosystem-based approach in building the resiliency of local communities. The municipality of Del Carmen in Siargao serves as a pilot area in implementing the Ecotime project. Various government institutions, including people's organizations and non-government organizations, participated and talked on how to increase the adaptive capacity of the community. Other Ecotown areas include Marikina City, whose watershed conservation project is now one of the city's initiatives in response to climate change. Other ecotowns include San Vicente, Palawan, Borongan, Eastern Samar, and Batanes. It is convenient to put misfortunes as natural, but when nature is interfered with, they become fundamentally man-made. But in the same way that we have created this, we also have the power to reverse and prevent its adverse effects. We ultimately hold the future in our hands. All efforts are not just for ourselves. It is to save our children, and even the children of our children.
Okay, so I presented the videos just for us to know what are we really talking about. And looking at the challenges before us, it's really a challenge that everyone should take part to, for us to actually address the impacts of climate change, for us to do something about it. So the video you have seen provided a summary on how climate change affects our daily lives and how everyone from the Climate Change Commission, from the government institutions, civil society groups, the academe, the business sector, and vulnerable groups, there's a need for us to come together to address this pressing problem. The manifestation of climate change, as presented in the video, is now present, and we are affecting it not only in the Philippines but all over the globe. And on how it's being addressed globally, we have very much been active, as Dean Tony Lavinia mentioned earlier. The Philippine delegation has been active since 1992, and our main goal there is for us to actually have, for the Philippines, for our interest, to actually have the international negotiations to help us adapt, especially because of the adverse effects of climate change, and our priority now is adaptation. What you've seen is, on mitigation, it's clearly important that we reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And globally, what the Philippine delegation has been pursuing is that for developed countries to be the ones in the forefront in actually, it's okay, 100% PowerPoint. It's for the developed countries to be the ones in the forefront to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, because the Philippines count for less than 1% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. And we adhere to the common but differentiated responsibility, where developed countries has that historical responsibility to help developing countries to continue our development, because we have a right for development, but done in a sustainable manner, and for us to actually be helped in terms of conducting climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. So in terms of financing, it was actually mentioned earlier, the need for climate financing, and even if we have the laws and policies in place, implementation relies on climate financing. And there have been a lot of initiatives globally, especially the climate change, the climate finance,
Climate Fund.
the climate fund, the Green Climate Fund, yes, has already been approved, and this will actually help us, the Global Green Climate Fund, and we need to push in the international negotiations for the Green Climate Fund to support adaptation actions in developing countries. So these are one of the main priorities of the Philippine delegation. Second is, even if we are actually negotiating globally, it is important that we establish the climate financing mechanism here in the Philippines. Right now, we have an interim climate finance group where we brought together the Department of Finance, Climate Change Commission, National Economic and Development Authority, as well as other concerned agencies, for us to actually see where the funds are coming from, especially mentioned by Kala. It is true that most funding on climate change are geared towards mitigation, and these are mostly loans. And as you see, the Climate Change Act has just been enacted in 2009, and we have this challenge to actually bring together all these projects that some are actually even being implemented now, to see where we can, for us to analyze if this is actually beneficial for us, or should the funds be actually geared towards adaptation. So we have the Philippine Development Forum, where the Climate Change Commission acts as vice chair, where we bring together funders, developed partners, international funding organizations, for us to know where the projects, the international projects on climate change is being put.